What is going on, everybody? Happy holidays. Welcome to the Week 16 NFL Power Rankings. What a Week 15 it was. Man, some crazy upsets. Lots to sort through. How do we handle the Jets beating the Rams, the Bengals beating the Steelers? How does that all play out? Well, it's going to be a fun one to get through. Please do hit that like button down below. I'm excited for this, so let's hop right in, starting with a brand new team at the bottom. The Jacksonville Jaguars in possession of last place in the NFL and in my power rankings. Despite them dropping down 2 spots here, they are probably actually the biggest winners of any team this week. Was looking like on a weekend where Justin Fields, maybe not the answer with the second overall pick, maybe is, maybe isn't, but they don't really have to worry about that now if they can just lose these last 2 weeks and do what they've been doing and put up terrible offense and terrible defense like they have for the last month of the season, especially on the defensive side of the ball. But yeah, Jags dropping down 2 spots. I think they are very clearly the worst team in the NFL. They just have not been competitive, unlike the Bengals and the Jets. So that is going to be the next 2 teams, the Bengals and the Jets. Pick your poison here, I suppose. I was ready to take a victory lap. I was defending my rankings last week and that I actually had the Bengals dead last week. And when the Jets came out and beat the Rams, I was like, see, the Jets are relatively competitive. Well, I was right about that, but you know what? The Bengals came out and really tried against the Steelers. I still think the Bengals offense, as it sits here right now, is the worst in the league. And if they played the Jags right now, it'd still be pretty much a coin toss. And these teams very much in a tier gap of their own. But as for the Jets, huge loss this week as far as winning that game against the Rams. That could potentially set their organization back. I don't want to overreact and say 10, 15 years, but at least 2 or 3 years. I mean, you were looking at getting Trevor Lawrence, and something I talked about. Getting Trevor Lawrence also makes you a much more attractive spot for the top coach candidates. So if they were going to get Brian Dable or Joe Brady or whoever it was going to be, all of a sudden that coach might want to go to Jacksonville instead to go coach Trevor Lawrence. Now, Sam Darnold was all right in this game, and we'll see what they do with that quarterback position, but things just got a lot more, I guess, interesting for the Jets, although worse. But yeah, these 3 teams, the lowest tier group in the league. They're more competitive than maybe we originally thought, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter all that much. And then this next tier cluster is a massive group, and we've got 15 teams in tier 2 here, if you will. And this is really just the who the hell knows group. Like, what kind of motivation do these teams have at this point in the season? What I do know is that anyone in this group could play any one of them, any one of each other, and beat the other one. I do know that. So 17 through 29 here. And 29 is the Niners. They are at the bottom of this tier for a reason. Nick Mullins is just not playing well. He can move the ball, but he will turn the ball over any moment. And the defense hasn't quite been what it was when this team was still trying to compete for a playoff spot. Defense is a lot about motivation. You got to question kind of where this team stands when they know they're not going to make the playoffs and they are so injured and they have all the excuses in the world to just start looking ahead to the offseason. And then the Giants dropping down 6 spots. This was just an overwhelmingly disappointing showing on Monday Night Football after a really rough week last week. This team looked like they were garnering momentum, like they were a really well-coached team that was going to come out and keep the score close and do enough on offense to maybe win the NFC East, and it just is not looking that way. I actually think they are the worst team in the NFC East right now because Colt McCoy can't really move the ball, and Daniel Jones, whether he's healthy or not, we just don't know what to expect from him these last 2 weeks of the season. So things are just not looking great for the Giants right now after some positivity about 2 weeks ago, and ultimately this could work out for the best for them. If they lose out here and end up getting that top 8 pick or whatever, maybe long-term that is the best thing for them. But the last couple weeks have been rough for the Giants. I don't think that's going to get disputed all that much, and they just aren't a good football team right now. Same thing goes for the Cowboys, but they're trending upwards, and they're a completely different team. Like, they have the talent, but they've just been depleted by injuries. But at the same time, how well coached is this team actually? Now, I will say they became a significantly better football team the second Zeke was inactive. And I am now taking the stance that I don't think it will happen, but the Cowboys should cut Ezekiel Elliott in the offseason for two obvious reasons. Number one, I've been saying this for a long time, but it could not be any more obvious, and I don't know how you could even argue it at this point. Tony Pollard is a better running back than Ezekiel Elliott. He's more explosive, he creates bigger runs in the run game, and he's a significantly better option in the receiving game. So not only is he just a better option for your offense, but when Zeke's not out there, it's so clear this play calling gets more creative. They don't lean on running the ball on first down every time. They put the ball in the hands of these receivers much more, and it just works much better. So Cowboys are trending up almost at the sole expense of Ezekiel Elliott getting injured. I still think this defense is pretty lousy, and I don't really trust the offense with Dalton and McCarthy and this offensive line all that much, but they're right in the mix here in the NFC East. And then the Denver Broncos dropping down 3 here. The defense has just taken a significant step back the last couple weeks, and that's where kind of the motivation comes into play. And, the offense is fine. Like, they're kind of boom or bust with Drew Lock. They're taking time to figure out what they have in Drew Lock. But the main thing that was keeping them in the mid-20s, mid to high 20s, was the fact that this defense was playing really well for Vic Fangio, and the last couple weeks, it just hasn't happened. They've been possibly the worst defense in the league over the last 2 weeks. Then the Carolina Panthers dropping down another spot this week, still very competitive. I mean, if you just look at the numbers, their schedule on the season, like, they hang in almost every game. And if it wasn't for a Teddy Bridgewater fumble on the goal line against Green Bay, who knows where that game ends in the second half. So the defense continues to be really appealing. I don't really know what the whole firing their general manager thing was all about. I would have to do a deep dive into that to figure out what that was, because I thought their draft was pretty good. I thought the Teddy Bridgewater signing over Cam Newton was a good decision to keep this team kind of competitive for the season. But yeah, this team it's all about how can they find a quarterback and this offseason. And the fact that they are losing despite playing competitive is the best case scenario for this team. I think they're currently in possession of the 4th overall pick. So you're going to be looking at a Fields, Lance, Wilson, whoever their guy ends up being there. But I think that's probably what we see come draft day. Then the Lions at 24, the Texans at 23, virtually the same teams right now. Both these defenses are anemic, to say the least. Like, two of the worst defenses in the league. Both have really great quarterbacks playing really well right now, and both teams have their best receiver out with Will Fuller and Kenny Golladay. Almost identical teams, and both teams showing that they can compete. And with these quarterbacks playing the way they're playing, they're going to be in every game. So pretty straightforward with those two teams. Tough to know their motivation, again, at this point in the season, but quarterback play matters. And when you're getting, in the Lions case, and let's put it this way, that Deshaun Watson was probably the best quarterback in the NFL in November, and Matthew Stafford has probably been the best quarterback in the NFL in December, just those months alone. So, you get that quarterback play, and you're going to be a competitive football team. Then the Eagles, +4. This team is fascinating, very fascinating. Jalen Hurts and all that stuff. How could you not have your interest peak? Now, it's too bad that they fell short to the Cardinals. They end up with the ball at the end of the game, and defense ultimately is probably what let them down there. But yeah, Jalen Hurts, Carson Wentz kind of pissed. Jalen Hurts playing well. This is just a fascinating team, and it's just, I don't have any other word for that. We'll see where this thing goes. I try to come up with an opinion and a prediction of what happens here. Where does Carson Wentz get traded? Does he get traded? Who starts here next year? How does Hurts play the rest of the season? It's all just extremely polarizing. I'm not going to sit here and try to predict what's going to happen, because I think whatever your take is, it's just a dart throw. This could really go anywhere. I'm excited to see it. But they're a very competitive football team right now. They went head-to-head with the Cardinals, and Jalen Hurts was fantastic doing so. Then the Falcons dropping down a spot. Cardinals, freaking out. No, the Falcons dropping down a spot. They're hanging right around here. They went head-to-head with the Bucs. The defense let them down in the second half. I said Matt Ryan was going to bounce back and play much better, even though I was very cynical of his performance the last couple weeks. And sure enough, he did. Came out great in the first half. But as Matt Ryan does, blows leads, can't, execute when the game's on the line. But he played well for the majority of the game, and they end up blowing it in typical Falcons fashion, but obviously still a very competitive football team. They're not going to drop down too far. Patriots are going to drop down 3 spots. They're officially out of the playoff race. And they're a team, as much as Belichick comes prepared, and you wouldn't think that they're a team that would tank it. I don't know. I don't know what their motivations are going to be. I don't know how much Belichick, he's kind of a diabolical coach in a lot of ways. I don't know if that's the right adjective or not, but he'll do what he needs to do to win. And I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if he comes out and just kind of plays vanilla for the last 2 weeks and maybe even goes to Stidham just to kind of see what they have. I don't know what their motivations are going to be now that they're officially eliminated, but that was definitely a concerning performance. Gilmore goes down. I haven't heard the news on him. It did not look good. So that kind of sucks for them. He was a trade candidate, and with that injury, it's hard to know where his career is going to go. So things are grim here for New England. I'm still giving Bill Belichick the benefit of the doubt, even though he's long-term. I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt, but they're going to be a very fascinating offseason. And then the Washington football team dropping down a spot here. They can't move the ball on offense. Dwayne Haskins came in the fourth quarter, kind of led a surge. It is what it is. I don't ever put too much stock into double-digit comebacks when you fall short because teams just play off. They give you the underneath stuff. They don't make it hard on you. It's called garbage time for a reason. Even if it's not necessarily garbage time, like they made it interesting at the end, it's still teams backing off, letting you take the easy stuff to chew the clock to do what they need to do to win. And that's from a, not diving deep into it, that is what it seemed that Seattle was doing in that game. But yeah, they're great on defense, but this game was just an example that you need offense. You need offense to win playoff games in this league. They're a good, competitive, well-coached team, but where are we really going here with the football team? They're a team that I think is very dangerously riding the line of future purgatory here with Rivera and whatever their quarterback situation is. Like, if they win the NFC East, they will be picking like 18th. That's not good for the future of this team. That's going to put them at a serious disadvantage to the other teams in their division. So I don't want to, totally crap on the football team. They have a lot of upside on defense, and I do like Rivera, but it is kind of, I've talked about this on my podcast. I look at everything in a lens of where are we going? How are we going to win a Super Bowl? And I think they're in a really tough spot in that lens. They could be a competitive 10-win team next year, but are they going to be able to win a Super Bowl in the next 4 years? I don't know. I really don't know. Okay, talk about a team with a much more positive outlook, and that is the LA Chargers. And I will take a victory lap on this one. I took a lot of flack 2 weeks ago. I had them 19th after they lost to the Patriots by 45 points and really pointed out the fluky elements of that game, and that I wasn't all that worried, even though the Chargers do consistently screw the easy stuff up. They do a lot of the hard stuff really well, and most notably is having a really good quarterback. And people also accuse me of sticking to my draft takes. Well, here I am defending the Chargers and saying they are better than you realize because Justin Herbert is legit. And I did not like Justin Herbert, but he is just ridiculous, dude. Like, man, I'm not going to go super far into Herbert here because I've done it in almost all my videos, it feels like. But they've got all these receivers. Like Tyron Johnson looks awesome. Keenan Allen. Yeah, they're a few pieces away and a coach away from being playoff contenders. And with the ceiling of Justin Herbert right now, they really are like a sky is the limit kind of team that I am super excited to see what happens to their offseason here. They've ripped off 2 wins in a row against very good opponents. And then the Vikings are going to drop down 3. I was off. I thought they were going to really fight and come out and play well, especially offensively down the stretch. Now, it's been the defense that's truly let them down last week against the Bucs and this week against the Bears. I mean, the Bears did whatever they wanted with Mike Zimmer's defense this week. So that's the big thing changing here. But yeah, this is kind of a deal where what is their motivation going to be moving forward? They clearly are not a Super Bowl team. They had those expectations coming into the year, and that can be hard on a team. So they're going to be at the top of this group, but I do think they are in this cluster of just mediocre football teams. And then we got a tier gap up into that top half of the league. We've got 2 teams in this next tier. We got a lot of mini tiers here in the mid-teens, but these are your playoff hopefuls. And that's going to start with the Chicago Bears jumping up 5 spots. Bears have now jumped up about 9 spots, I think, maybe even 10 spots in the last 2 weeks. Just flipped a switch, and Mitch Trubisky flipped a switch. But all year we were dogging this offense because they couldn't move the ball, and all of a sudden, hey, Mitch is accurate. He's been decisive. He's limiting mistakes. He's running when he needs to. This offense Hell, dare I say this offense has been good for like 3 weeks now? Was the Packers game 3 weeks ago? At least last week against Detroit and this week against the Vikings, they've looked like a very serviceable offense. Allen Robinson has been an all-star in this version of the offense. They're running the ball. David Montgomery looks great. They're getting Darnell Mooney going, and like that's enough. When you have this defense, which I know is taking a step back the last couple weeks, but if they get remotivated, this could be a solid, playoff team for the Bears. They're going to be dogging it out with the Cardinals here for that 7 seed. I think it's either going to be them or the Cardinals. I think they're going to come out the last 2 weeks and be really tough. So keep an eye on these Bears. It's hard to trust Trubisky for sure, but he's playing hot right now, and he's been a streaky quarterback. I don't want to say his whole career, but going back to the big year he had, his Pro Bowl season, we'll see. We'll see where they go. Is Mitch going to fake them into bringing Mitch back next year and they run this thing back? I don't know. I don't know, but it's fascinating. Then we got the Raiders actually jumping up a spot despite losing to the Chargers. Those are the Raiders. Derek Carr went down in an injury in that game. Hard to kind of know where that leaves them. I'm really excited about what Mariota could do here. Now, they're pretty far out of the picture. Their playoff chances are not looking great with that loss to the Chargers, but for those that have followed these power rankings all season, I was very hesitant to bump this team up into the 12, 11, 10 spots. I think some of the major networks had them like 6th at one point in time. Like, that's just insane. Their defense is terrible. They're right there with the Texans and the Lions and the Jags. Like, they just don't have the personnel on defense. When they changed their defense coordinator, said that wasn't the problem. Turns out they don't have anyone that can cover. They don't have anyone that can rush the passer. Turns out it's hard to play defense when that's the case. And you're going to lose a game to the Chargers where you can't slow down Justin Herbert. You can lose to anyone when your defense is that bad. And you don't have an elite Patrick Mahomes, Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers quarterback to dig you out every single drive. But they're still a very good football team. I'm intrigued by what they are with Marcus Mariota. They're going to play their ass off knowing that they have a chance. And I still think they're a very well-coached team, especially on offense. So they're actually jumping up a spot because the Vikings were so disappointing. But obviously you're not super stoked at the end of the day if you're a Raiders fan right now. And Gruden's got to own up to some of these very terrible draft decisions he's made. Like, quite frankly, that's where a lot of my pessimism has originated for this team. And if you're a Raiders fan that's followed me over the last couple of years, I think you would stand by me on pretty much everything I've criticized for them, whether it was the Khalil Mack trade or the Clelin Ferrell pick or the Jonathan Abram pick or the Damon Arnett pick. They just have not drafted well, and they haven't made the best free agent signings either. So pretty ironic that we have the Bears and the Raiders trying to sneak into the playoffs 2 years after the Khalil Mack trade in their own tier gap in the middle, just outside of the playoff picture. All the talk about who won the trade, well, neither of these teams have won a playoff game, and here they are probably going to miss the playoffs, both of them 2 years later. Tier gap up now to 2 more teams that are probably playoff teams here, but teams that I'm not taking all that seriously as far as their likelihood to win a playoff game. So that starts with the Miami Dolphins. Now, I will apologize again to the Dolphins fans. I was wrong again. I actually picked the Patriots this week. I thought with Tua and all these injuries, I didn't think they were going to be able to, do what they needed to do on offense to win a scrappy game against the Patriots, and they did. And Tua made some tough plays. This was never going to be an easy day for Tua, and I was impressed. I mean, he still has a lot of things to work on. I've talked a lot about Tua, but he's a good fit for this style of team where they don't have the talent to really go head-to-head with a lot of great teams. I think we saw it against the Chiefs, but ultimately if they can muddy up games like this and keep forcing turnovers on defense that they've shown the ability to do, to have a quarterback that can do his best job to kind of make scrappy plays with his feet, and you hope he can take care of the football. I know his touchdown-interception ratio has been great. He's forcing some balls over the middle, getting away with some pretty crazy stuff, but I think Tua can get to that point where he's sort of that game manager quarterback that can make some tough plays and help them try to win close. And long term, you hope that they can open up the upside here. But they can hang. They can absolutely hang. And I think they're on their way to the playoffs now with that win. And now that I say that, I realize that they might be the odd man out in the AFC. But even if they don't get in, They are one of the 14 best teams in the NFL because if they were in the NFC East, they'd be taking that thing home easily. But you get the point, what I'm saying about this Dolphins team. A playoff caliber team. I never thought they would get there, and I'm sorry, Dolphins fans. I'm sorry that I doubted the Miami Dolphins. Okay, the Arizona Cardinals at 13. I do think they are going to take home the 7 seed in the NFC. Now, they got a lot of problems, but Kyler Murray is healthy. He can make a ton of good plays. That DeAndre Hopkins, Kyler Murray magic came back this week, absolutely. When Kyler Murray can make plays with his feet, this offense opens up. Cliff Kingsbury, I think, gets more comfortable as a play caller because when this team has to manufacture a ground game with Kenyon Drake, it just isn't pretty. And then that it reflects poorly on the rest of the team. This defense is just not trustworthy. They have some playmakers, but I think just saying they aren't trustworthy, I think, is very fair. They're going to have a hard time winning a playoff game because I worry about their drive-to-drive consistency. A big theme as we get down the stretch here is, does this team know who they are, and do they know what they need to do to win games? That's what it comes down to in the NFL come playoff time, is having an identity, knowing what you do well, knowing your strengths, how to take away another team's strengths. And I just don't think this Cardinals team has a grasp on those sort of things, being a young team with some holes on the roster as well. But both these teams, playoff caliber teams, but teams that I'm really not taking seriously, would take a very much like miracle, like the quote from Herb Brooks. If we played these guys 10 times, they might win 9. That's the Cardinals and the Dolphins in the playoffs. And they'd have to do it 4 times to win a Super Bowl. But then we have a tier gap up to just the Pittsburgh Steelers in their own tier gap. What do you do with the Steelers, man? Holy crap. They lost to the Bengals in just the most embarrassing fashion you can imagine. Ben Roethlisberger looks like he should have retired at halftime. It was awful. Top 5 worst quarterback performances of the season. He's just been bad. It's been bad reads, inaccurate throws. He can't extend plays with his feet. He doesn't have that athleticism anymore. And the defense, ever since they lost Bud Dupree, does not have that same it factor where it feels like they can be the best defense in the NFL, be an elite defense that they can legitimately win games with. And they don't have a run game to complement the defense either. So this team doesn't know who they are. They can't move the ball on offense. Their defense is struggling because they're on the field too much. And they did lose Bud Dupree, which we're kind of learning that maybe Bud Dupree is a little more meaningful to this team than we realized. We kind of mocked that franchise tag, but yeah, man, the Steelers are falling apart. I still think they have time to get this thing right and be a team that can be in that Super Bowl tier and compete. But from what we've seen over the last 3 weeks of the season, this is a really bad football team that has to figure things out immediately. They might be one of the most fraudulent double-digit teams of the last decade, based on what we've seen right now, if they don't turn this thing around immediately. So then we have a tier gap up. These next 3 teams are really capable playoff teams that can totally play spoiler. If you got these 3 as the 6 seed or the 7 seed and you were the 2 seed, you'd be sitting back like, dang it, like I want the old playoff format back. Like, why is this team in the playoffs? They're really good. I wish we had a bye week. I wish we didn't have to put up a great game to beat these teams because they really are spoiler types of teams that could potentially go on runs if everything clicks. But ultimately teams that have some warts that might bite them if you want to predict them to win a Super Bowl. But anyway, the Titans at 11, they are just an extremely explosive offense. It's fair to say that. But I'm worried about this defense. I'm really worried about the defense. And when this defense is so bad, it is difficult for them to consistently get into the game script that they need to be so explosive on offense, where they can lean on play action, they can have that threat of Derrick Henry, and they can juice up A.J. Brown on those crossing routes, which is really tough to stop when they're able to play in the rhythm that they want to play in. But if they get down early, do I trust Ryan Tannehill to drop back 35 times and get into a shootout with some of these other offenses? No, I really don't, especially when the Titans' defense is as bad as it is. So they're a really good team. I don't want to trash on them, but we're getting into a situation where these teams have very big expectations. So I think it's fair to point out what could ultimately hold them back. But I do like the Titans as they're playing hot and healthy heading into the playoffs. Then the Browns +1. I love that this offense is figuring out who they want to be. Defense is trying to come into its own. I know they struggled against Baltimore. But yeah, this team is just very steady. They're very similar in a lot of ways to like the Rams and the Colts. They play very controlled. They block very well up front. I'd just be worried about kind of this linebacking core, the secondary. They give up a lot of big plays, or at least they can. So that could hold them back for very similar reasons to the Tennessee Titans. But I love the way Baker's playing. These offenses just playing very confident. So Titans and Browns, very similar teams. And then the Baltimore Ravens at number 9, their flaws are very obvious, but the Ravens are entering scary territory in that they are just playing with nothing to lose right now. And Lamar is basically, what I'm seeing from Lamar and this offense is it felt like for so many times early on in the season, they were trying to make Lamar something he currently isn't. And I think long-term that is still something they would benefit from as far as making him a more sustainable pocket passer. But, I mean, they're in crunch time at this point. They don't have time to work on that stuff, and they're just kind of going back to the basics here, saying, Lamar, don't worry about hanging in the pocket. If you feel pressure, just go. Use your feet, get outside the pocket, make plays. We're going to get you going on these read options, and we're going to get back to playing great defense. And they're just very scary. They have a lot of injuries. They have flaws as a team. But, yeah, the Ravens are a team that I would not want to play right now. Then the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to stay put at number 8. They have been the same team, it feels like, for weeks and weeks and weeks, where we're just kind of waiting to see, are they going to click? Or is this who they are? Are they going to be a team that plays the best defense that they can with a loaded defensive roster? They're going to run the ball a ton and basically connect on a few beautifully dropped deep balls from Tom Brady and just kind of be out of touch on a bunch of other third downs throughout the day. And they're kind of running out of time. They have 2 more weeks to all of a sudden start clicking full cylinder for the offense. I still am not going to rule out that could happen. But as we sit here today, I'm not going to project that they all of a sudden flip that switch. I thought coming off the bye week 2 weeks ago against the Vikings that was going to happen, and it simply did not. There's a lot of times where Brady and these receivers just aren't on the same page, and Brady looks uncomfortable in this offense that is so predicated on vertical passing that is just not catered to his skill set. So they're going to stay put at 8. They have not disappointed me, but they also haven't really impressed me. And then the Rams, talk about disappointment. That was just a really bad week. Now, it's not like the Steelers where we've seen these signs for concern for 3-4 weeks in a row, or frankly even the whole season. The Rams, they're an extremely steady team, but on a weekly note, they don't have immense upside. You're worried about Jared Goff at any point kind of laying a stinker. This offensive line is really well schemed up, and they got some good athletes in there, but they're inexperienced. They're unproven. So you got some shaky elements to the offense. They're extremely dependent on the run game and stemming play action off of it. I've talked a lot about how they don't have much of a counterpunch. So there's some things that hurt them with that offense, and defensively they're very sound. I didn't see anything on the defense that really worried me this week. So I'm not going to overreact to the Rams here. I think they're very capable of losing to the Jets, as we just saw, but they're also capable of beating the Seahawks, as we've also seen. So they're going to drop down 1, but I'm not too worried. Rams kind of are what they are. I've been saying that, I feel like, for a long time now with the Rams. And then the Colts have also kind of established themselves as this very solid team, and I think they've increased their upside a lot too. Go back like 3 or 4 weeks, I really banged on this team for having an okay offense and a really good defense, but what is the ceiling really in that situation? And what's changed there is the offense is clicking, and they know who they are. Frank Reich, Phillip Rivers, these receivers, they have a game plan. They run a ton of mesh. They're running the ball so much better now. That was a big part of this with Jonathan Taylor and what should have been an electric, explosive run game. They're getting into that now. Jonathan Taylor is getting right at the right time here. So the offensive ceiling is opening up, and that's going to take a lot of pressure off of the defense to really carry. And that's where you can get excited about the Colts. They're a team that could hang in there with the Chiefs because they do limit big plays, which will really help them against the Colts. If they could manufacture a pass rush against Mahomes, maybe they force an interception or a fumble or two, and then they just run the ball and hang in there and scrap it out 23-20. And like I've said, in the AFC, if you knock out the Chiefs, you can win the AFC. And I think the Colts are in this group of teams that could do that. And if you can do that, you're a Super Bowl contender. Then the Saints are going to drop down 2 spots. Still not too worried about them, but I will say I was not impressed by what we saw from Drew Brees coming back. The Chiefs' defense is not all that good, and Drew Brees was extremely uncomfortable the entire night. made a couple throws, made some nice things happen, but the lack of arm strength just really concerns me. You see it when he throws out routes. You see it when he tries to throw the ball deep. He can get it there if he puts everything into it, but I just think there's a certain lack of upside there. They're also without Michael Thomas right now, and it's getting in dangerous territory here. Michael Thomas has not been healthy all season. He clearly has not been himself. They put him on IR. They said he'll be back for the start of the playoffs. We don't know what version of Michael Thomas we're going to get. We don't know how healthy Drew Brees really is or how he's playing right now. It doesn't feel like the Saints are hot and healthy at the right time, which is really important in the NFL. And everyone else ahead of them feels like they're picking up momentum, whereas the Saints, they've been kind of like 2 steps forward, and then this week was kind of a little bit like 1 step back. I know it was the Chiefs, and I'm not going to overreact. I still think it's a great defense, which will absolutely help them. But the offense, without Michael Thomas and Drew Brees playing the way he is right now, I'm just a little hesitant to say they are I said that with a healthy Drew Brees, they'd be the best team in the NFC, and that Drew Brees that we watched against the Chiefs is not a Drew Brees that I'm confident to say that. The Drew Brees that we saw before his injury, absolutely. He was playing perfect football. He was riding that thin line and just play to play. It was just lights out. But that's not what we saw against the Chiefs. So we got to see that before I take them back as the best team in the NFC. But then the Seahawks at number 4. I'm going to take a victory lap on this one. 5, 6, 7 weeks ago, I said, stop worrying about this defense. There was a lot of narratives going out there, a lot of pieces, articles, videos getting put out there. This was a historically bad defense. And yeah, they were really bad on defense for the first few weeks of the season, 5, 6 weeks. But Pete Carroll, a talented defense. Yeah, they've got some holes, but I had full confidence that this team would restore their defense to an average unit with Pete Carroll, who I had full confidence would get this thing under grasps, and that's exactly what's happened. And offensively, I'm simply put, I'm just not worried about this offense. Russell Wilson, Metcalf, a decent run game, like they can hit you at any point, any moment. They're just a very polarizing team. They could come out and lay a stinker and get blown out in the playoffs, but they're gonna fight, and they're gonna be in every single game. And I just trust this team more than guys like the Saints and the Rams and the Bucks in a playoff game right now, because they have a little bit more of that it factor. They're playing better on defense, and they have the playmakers on offense. I think they are very much the sleeper team who peaked early, struggled, and then everyone wrote them off. And now it's kind of similar to the Chiefs last year, to be honest. Very similar to the Chiefs last year, who a lot of people had written off come playoff time. But the Seahawks kind of have that feel of like, people are writing us off, no one's picking us, but don't forget about Russell Wilson, who was like the unanimous MVP for the first half of the season. So don't forget about us, says Seattle faithful. But then the Bills making a lot of noise right now. They're going up +1 this week with the Saints falling. They're just awesome. Brian Dable, Josh Allen, defense coming alive a little bit. I have not a bad word to say about the Bills. I'd be a little bit worried about the defense. I'd be a little bit worried about Josh Allen making some crazy, stupid mistake against the Chiefs in the fourth quarter that makes you worried. But at the end of the day, I feel best about the Chiefs going head-to-head. Best about the Bills going head-to-head with the Chiefs in the AFC. They have the talent to do it. They have the explosiveness to do it. And I'd be pretty fired up about the Bills. I mean, Josh Allen is just shocked the world. He absolutely should be the most improved player award winner this season. Then the Packers at number 2, staying put. They kind of coasted against the Panthers. I have kind of a theory on that one that they just kind of took their foot off the gas a little bit, up 21-3 at halftime, and with the Titans coming up, I think they felt pretty good. And they did this a lot last year, where they just kind of were like, we'll just kind of glide to this thing. We'll run the ball. We're gonna throw quick passes and just get out of here with the win. Just kind of felt like that's what they wanted to do, just the game plan. Like, literally, they just were running screens and running the ball. They just didn't throw the ball downfield. And I do think there's something to the idea that they were holding back and not showing their cards against a Panthers team, that they were going to win that game after the awesome first half that they had. So I'm just saying that because people are going to freak out because they didn't look great in the second half against the Panthers. I don't look too much into that. It kind of felt like they came out of the second half already counting their victory, looking ahead to Tennessee. So excited to see them take on the Titans. It's going to be a big week for them, and if they beat the Titans, I think they clinch the 1 seed, and then we might be able to see Jordan Love week 17, which would be really fun. Then the tier gap up to the Kansas City Chiefs at number 1, taking care of the Saints. Not a huge surprise. Patrick Mahomes just doing Patrick Mahomes things. Chiefs just keep on rolling, so they're staying at the top. There are the power rankings this week. Got a little bit longer, but I don't think you guys are going to complain about that. You're not going to be hearing too much from me this week for the holidays. I appreciate you guys for watching. Please do hit that like button. Excited to see what you have to say in the comments down below, where you agree, where you disagree. And also have a great holidays, guys. I appreciate all of you. Excited to be back next week and hit the ground running with 2021. So peace out, guys. We'll see you later.